Let's get into some schoolwork. Sorry, I was on the phone and messing around with some stuff. Gotta finish the school stuff so I can hop on and play some GTA.
Hi everyone, this video is going to be a quick introduction on lighting equipment. Now there's two main types. We have a continuous light source and also a strobe light source. So let's start with the continuous light source. Now with the continuous light source, when I turn it on, you'll notice it's on. Very similar to the sun in that regard, that when it's on, it's on. Now this one here is roughly 3400 Kelvin, but there's a variety of ones out there. The lights that are lighting me right now are a little bit different. They have a mix of different LED lights in them from warm to cool, so the color temperature can go up or down. We also have fluorescent lights that are continuous light source, quartz lights, so there's a pretty good variety out there. Now one of the things to be aware of with a light like this, when you turn it on, it's generating quite a bit of heat. So even just standing here right now, I can feel the heat coming off. So you want to be careful about that. You don't want to put this next to anything flammable, let's say, drapes or something in your house. So you want to be careful with that. It's also very warm in the front, so if you put it next to a person, you have to be careful. Now over here we have a strobe light. Now for this, it's connected to a generator. When I turn it on, I'm powering up this generator. So it's turned on, it's powered up. And when I hit the button to fire it, it's going to be an instantaneous burst of light. So pretty quick, comes on, goes off. Really nice thing about that is, A, it does freeze the action, but it's not generating a lot of heat, which is nice. But something you have to be careful about is that when it fires, it's taking the power in here and it's sending it out through here. So this actually has to recharge. So you want to be careful. You can't fire too fast with it because you'll fire faster than the light could actually go. Now with the continuous light source, when I turn it on, you can see where you're aiming the light. Well, the strobe's a little bit different. I can't see where I'm aiming it, but we do have a little helper built in called a modeling light. So I can turn the modeling light on, adjust my light to where I need to aim it on my subject. Now we're not going to use the modeling light to take the picture. You could leave it on, recommend turning it off, but then when you fire it, instantaneous burst, you take the picture and you should be good to go. So we have our continuous light source and our strobe.
I gotta go make a shadow box too, or a little light box. Box to cut out.
Continuous lights are, as you might imagine, continuous running lights that allow the photographer to easily judge light intensity and placement because they stay on the entire time. Continuous light sources break down to three choices: tungsten, fluorescent, and LED. Continuous lights are less expensive than strobes, but provide less light than strobes. Continuous lights have evolved over the last several years, so there are more options available now. Historically, the most common continuous light is the photoflood, which has a tungsten filament and is similar to, but more powerful than, a household bulb. Generally, these are purchased in a kit of housing, light stands, and reflectors. The bulbs are often referred to as hot lights because of the heat they emit. They require gloves to handle and quickly heat a room. Standard studio lights that take only tungsten bulbs are not balanced for daylight, making daylight balancing more challenging. Daylight compact fluorescent, or CFL, spiral bulbs specifically designed for digital imaging are an alternative to tungsten. These are the most common bulb used in continuous studio lighting. These lights are comfortable to work under, have a long life, and are energy efficient. Triple reflector heads can hold 3 CFLs, creating a cool, even, daylight-balanced light. LEDs have risen in popularity. with nearly every major lighting manufacturer offering a model or models. LEDs produce very little heat, allowing you to squeeze them into tighter areas without risking injury or damage to property. This also keeps the room you are working in cool. LEDs have impressive output for very little electrical draw. The life expectancy for the bulbs is much longer than both tungsten and fluorescent options. LEDs also offer the option to have a variable color balance in one fixture as an alternative to using filters.
Oh, I'm getting sidetracked on my freaking Discord. All right, let's go next.
The positioning of any of the lights we have discussed affects the quality of the light they emit. Let's address how photographers might position lights in a studio. The quality of the light is affected by direction and intensity, or lack of intensity, following the same principles as natural light. The main light used in any given shooting scenario is also called the key light. For now, we'll introduce the basics of a standard 3-light setup. The overall quality of light will be determined by the fill light and accent or background light, in conjunction with the key light. Fill light in the studio is applied with the same principle as fill flash outdoors with an on-camera flash, or as bounce light with a reflector or foam core. The idea is to control contrast and fill shadows to achieve the desired lighting ratio. For example, if you don't like the way
nipples.
shadows are falling on your subject from the main light, or key light, you will want to fill them in with light, hence the fill light. The fill, as we've discussed, alleviates the shadow areas in your scene while still maintaining some of the brightness. Accent lights are most commonly used with portrait photography. Portrait photography often necessitates formal lighting that calls for specific accents on the subject's hair, face, or clothes. Most all accent lights consist of a long, narrow beam. The light is often transmitted through a modifier called a snoot light or rim light. This light is set on the side of the subject and aimed toward the area that needs the accent. The greatest advantage to accent lights is their ability to separate the subject from the background, giving the subject's features more depth. You may also consider lighting the background with fill lights. One way of filling the background is to attach your fill lights on stands that hold the lights in the position you choose. To visually pull this conversation together, let's review some example diagrams for this 3-light type of setup. While you won't be employing artificial lights in this class, you will be doing so soon. Understanding these common principles will ensure you are well prepared when the time comes, and it will improve your ability to judge lighting scenarios in the present.
Maybe I should pay attention to my math. All right, let's see.
When you bounce flash, you are bouncing the light from your continuous or strobe unit off of another object and onto your subject. In order to achieve bounce flash, your lighting unit must tilt at different angles. When you point your lighting, the light is spread over a larger area, allowing the light to become more diffused before it reaches your subject. Make sure the object the light bounces off of is not excessively bright, too high, or far away. Light weakens as it travels, so it won't illuminate a subject that is too far away. Conversely, light that bounces off a bright surface that is too close to the subject might be too bright. Tone down or soften bounce by reflecting it off of darker objects, or placing a diffusion filter over the flash unit itself. A simple technique is to take a white piece of paper or index card and put it on your flash at an outward projecting angle. When you use the on-camera flash, the light output will move forward, bouncing some of the light off of the white piece of paper. The reflected light will help prevent the dark shadows that can result when you don't redirect the light. You can buy professional bounce reflectors from your local camera store, but the homemade versions work just as well, if not better, because you can customize them. When you bounce flash, you are bouncing the light from your continuous or strobe unit off of another object and onto your subject. In order to achieve bounce flash, your lighting unit must tilt at different angles. When you point your lighting, the light is spread over a larger area, allowing the light to become more diffused before it reaches your subject. Make sure the object the light bounces off of is not excessively bright, too high, or far away. Light weakens as it travels, so it won't illuminate a subject that is too far away. Conversely, light that bounces off a bright surface that is too close to the subject might be too bright. Tone down or soften bounce by reflecting it off of darker objects or placing a diffusion filter over the flash unit itself. Simple technique is to take a white piece of paper or index card and put it on your flash at an outward projecting angle. When you use the on-camera flash, the light output will move forward, bouncing some of the light off of the white piece of paper. The reflected light will help prevent the dark shadows that can result when you don't redirect the light. You can buy professional bounce reflectors from your local camera store, but the homemade versions work just as well, if not better, because you can customize them. Diffusion is a way to soften the light that emanates from the flash. One way to practice diffusion is to tape a piece of photographic light diffusion film, tracing vellum, or plain tissue paper over the head of the flash unit. If you wish, you may purchase other, more expensive flash diffusers from your local camera store. Most of these attachments are made from a soft, semi-transparent plastic and attach directly to the head of the flash unit. Another option is a mini softbox diffuser that slides over the head, reducing the flash output. As discussed earlier, light that hits the subject straight on is flat and lacks dimensional qualities. To achieve enhanced quality, photographers will often remove the flash unit from the camera. One of the most effective and simplest techniques for off-camera flash is to hold it in your hand. When you do this, hold the flash above your head or out to the side, at least at arm's length, and direct it toward your subject at an angle. If you are looking to keep the flash more stable or are using multiple flash units, utilize flash stands. Companies that make SLR cameras also make specialized cables that allow automatic through-the-lens technology to control the exposure of the dedicated flash units, even when the flash is being used off-camera. The advantage is that it allows you to adjust the position of the flash. As you reposition the flash, the automatic TTL metering reads light reflected by the subject and adjusts accordingly. Wireless flash units are now being used on a regular basis. These units make use of what is called a slave. The slave is a signal transporter that picks up the light being fired by one flash and triggers another flash unit to subsequently fire its flash. There are some important factors to think about when you place an off-camera flash. Try to visualize where the shadow areas will be created. If you choose not to soften the light using any of the means we have discussed, then visualizing where the shadows will potentially fall will be of great importance. Not using a flash unit diffuser will result in harsh shadows, making your off-camera technique reliant on trial and error. For this reason, using some sort of diffusing method is highly recommended. If you find yourself using off-camera flash frequently, it's time to invest in a set of strobe lights and stands. Fill flash may be used to reduce a scene's overall contrast. In some cases, it will help control the overall brightness, keeping the exposure within the range of the film or image sensor. The use of fill flash will add just enough light to your subject to fill, or brighten, your shadow areas. Bright, direct lighting conditions can result in strong shadows and harsh lighting, and can create unflattering features on your subject. The conventional use of fill flash is to photograph people in exactly these conditions. The art of using fill flash lies in subtlety of use. Your main objective is to soften or reduce the shadows so the viewer may see into them. The trick is to balance the brightness or power of the flash with the bright daylight so the facial tones appear relatively natural, not too blown out and not too dark. The idea of controlling contrast and using fill flash to better balance the shadows in relation to the highlights is the same idea as using reflector cards to bounce light into shadow areas. Lighting ratios are a way to measure contrast, and they're fundamental to portrait lighting. Within any given scene, there will be a ratio between the main, or key, light and the fill light. This relationship, or ratio, is expressed by numbers, such as 2:1, indicating a brightness ratio of 2:1. In such a scenario, the key light is twice as bright as the fill light. The higher the ratio, or difference in brightness, between the lit and shadow sides of the subject, the greater the contrast level. Without a fill light, the difference between the lit and shadowed sides may also be considered as a ratio. For example, in a 1:1 ratio, the lit side of the subject is no lighter than the shadow side. If an exposure for the lit side measured 1/60th of a second at f8, the exposure for the shadow side would read the same. A 2:1 ratio would read twice the amount of light on the lit side as the shadow side. This would represent a one-stop difference between the lit and shadow side. If the lit side measured 1/60th at f8, then the shadow side would read one stop less at f5.6. In a 4:1 ratio, the lit side is 4 times, or 2 whole stops, lighter than the shadow side. If the lit side were metered at 1/60th at f8, then the shadow side would read 2 stops less at f4. In an 8:1 ratio, the lit side is 8 times, or 3 stops, lighter than the shadow area. If the lit side were metered at 1/60th at f8, then the shadow side would read 3 stops less, at 1/60th at f2.8.
Hi everyone, in this video I want to take a moment and talk about lighting ratios. Now we are in a photo studio using some strobe lighting, but let's not worry about the type of lighting we're using today. What I want to talk about the amount of light falling on Shannon right now. So we have our highlight side and our shadow side, and we're going to be controlling this both by the power pack and also the distance from the light to our subject. So I'm going to take a couple quick meter readings. Make sure everything's turned on here. And our highlight side is f22. I'm going to aim this right to this light. Shadow side is also f22. So that's a 1-to-1 ratio. They're equal. So highlight side, shadow side, both equal. Now on my power pack, I'm going to turn it down so it's 1 stop less on our shadow side. Make a little adjustment. Now with the power pack, sometimes you need to what's called dump power. So watch your eyes. Perfect. Now what I should have is f22, f16, and it's going to be 1 stop less on our shadow side. Just to confirm I was correct on this side. f22, I like that. And our shadow side, f16. So again, we have a 1-to-2 ratio. Perfect. Now let's say I want to have a little bit more contrast in the scene. I can go to a 1-to-4 ratio. So I'm going to go from 22 again, but now instead of 16, I want to be at f11. So drop the power, going to hit the test button so it's going to fire. It's always good to warn your model about that. So we already know that's f22. So I'll set the meter, aim it right at the light. Perfect, right on f11. So right now I have a 1-to-4 ratio, and that's right where I want to be. And you'll notice in the image that it's a pretty hard shadow on her shadow side, pretty dark. Now unfortunately on the power pack, I can't dial this down any farther, but what I can do, I can actually move this light back a little bit so it will fall off. So I'm just going to set this back a little. Now I'll be honest and let you know, I already measured that on the floor, so it's actually moved it back the whole, or 1 stop distance. So take one more meter reading. Should be at f8, and that's perfect. So right now we have a 1-to-8 ratio, so it's 4 stops on our face. So pretty good highlight f22, pretty strong shadow side right now at f8. So this has been lighting ratios.
Yeah, boy. Oof, I'm not ready for the quiz. Full strobe setup, huh? Of course, it's the last one I just went through. It should have been strobes. Ay, ay, ay. That's still a 90. Okay. starting to get sick. Not fun. Okay. Not fair. Do my classroom portion, and then I'll go out and take some photos. Then I'll be done. But I gotta do photos, but then I also have to do. A light box, which is. It's gotta create. I gotta get tracing paper in a side mounted light, or a clamp light, but I don't want to do that. That costs money.
To begin, let's think of our critiques as our own version of criticism. The word criticism might have a negative connotation to you, but in this context, we actually mean a process of considering or even celebrating photographs. Writer and photographer Wright Morris once noted that when we criticize, we 1. Describe, 2. Interpret, 3. Evaluate, and 4. Theorize, although evaluation is not always necessary for a full critique. This probably sounds familiar from the critiques you have been doing in this course and Photography Principles and Techniques. Terry Barrett, in his book Making Art, Form and Meaning, presents the following as definitions of critique. An examination of a work of art to determine how successful it is in achieving certain goals or following guidelines previously established. A conversation about why and how a work of art was created. An event during which an artist finds out viewers' responses so that he or she can evaluate how the image is interpreted and judged by others. An opportunity for students to get guidance and support from faculty and peers to gain greater consciousness of the hows and whys of their works. A means for a group to get at big issues and to form a bond of purpose for a class. A public discussion of an individual's aesthetic ideas and tangible results, with commentary by both the maker and the viewer. And usually, a collective group exchange between students and professors about technique, form, concepts, production, theory, and iconography.
What the fuck did I just hear? I wasn't paying attention. Alright, let's try it again. This is rough. Go to school with ADHD and a bunch of other shit going down, huh?
To begin, let's think of our critiques as our own version of criticism. The word criticism might have a negative connotation to you, but in this context, we actually mean a process of considering or even celebrating photographs. Writer and photographer Wright Morris once noted that when we criticize, we 1. Describe, 2. Interpret, 3. Evaluate, and 4. Theorize, although evaluation is not always necessary for a full critique. This probably sounds familiar from the critiques you have been doing in this course and Photography Principles and Techniques. Terry Barrett, in his book Making Art, Form and Meaning, presents the following as definitions of critique. An examination of a work of art to determine how successful it is in achieving certain goals or following guidelines previously established. A conversation about why and how a work of art was created. An event during which an artist finds out viewers' responses so that he or she can evaluate how the image is interpreted and judged by others. An opportunity for students to get guidance and support from faculty and peers to gain greater consciousness of the hows and whys of their works. A means for a group to get at big issues and to form a bond of purpose for a class. A public discussion of an individual's aesthetic ideas and tangible results, with commentary by both the maker and the viewer. And usually, a collective group exchange between students and professors about technique, form, concepts, production, theory, and iconography. When critiquing, you might wonder, do we have to read so much into every image? And actually, the answer is no. In fact, some photographs require more reading than others. Perhaps a landscape by Ansel Adams would mean something to you, even if you knew nothing about its creation. But knowing more, that he often hiked for days, or that he created the most sophisticated film processing system of his time, does the photograph also mean something more? Does knowing how Adams pre-visualized this image in terms of separate zones make it more successful to you? Maybe not. But understanding how Adams used the zone system to create a range of tones, which consequently affects the formal qualities of the image, means you could use the zone system to your advantage as well. The truth is that critiquing rarely hurts your process, and more often is the primary contributor to its growth. This is because the process of naming and thinking about visual matter is enhanced by connecting it to language. While we are never able to fully sum up a photograph with words or interpret it indefinitely, we can actually deepen its meaning and our own understanding and appreciation through this type of dialogue. While it might feel painstaking, consistent critiques form the foundation for every successful photographic education. In Making Art, Terry Barrett cites the reasoning and advice of several instructors for how and why critiques are helpful. A critique is for learning how to see. We, as artists, can learn a lot after the making of a thing by looking at that thing. A critique can only help you think about your work. Crits help you get a distance between yourself and the work. Crits can bring new light to the work. Be open to new ideas. Try to disregard what you already think you know about your work. You are not your work. A criticism of it is not a criticism of you. You learn how to maximize the benefits of the criticism given, and, more importantly, decide what is useful and not useful in any feedback you get. You can learn how to think and talk about work, others' works, not just your own. Art class is not just about creating a piece. It's about how the piece functions after you have presented it. Don't be afraid to talk. What you have to say is important and is never unintelligent. Look before you speak. Speak first about what is there, rather than about what is not there. Be honest. Realize that you know more than you think you know. Be aware of your cultural biases. Barrett also polled a number of advanced students to determine the helpfulness of critique. Here are some of the things the students said. I want to know if my photographs work visually and what effect they have emotionally and intellectually. I want to know if I met the criteria of the assignment. I also want to know how people related to or interpreted my work. A critique should be a supportive, positive experience. I want to learn what works and what doesn't and why. If something really shines, I'd also like to know how and why. I want the work to be viewed with respect. Tell me what you get from my work and what thoughts it arouses within your mind. Then let me decide whether your feedback is valid to me. I like to hear what people are seeing when they look at one of my pieces. It helps me figure out what I need to do to make it a stronger piece. Sometimes I get too close to the work, and I need new insights into the work from others. I want harsh thought. My work will never progress to its potential unless I'm told what appear to be my strengths and weaknesses, what I'm doing both well and not so well. I want probing questions that help me expand my thinking, clarifying questions that require factual responses. I'd like to hear links between my work and that of other contemporary artists who may have done work similar to mine. I don't want to feel uncomfortable or embarrassed. I don't want to defend my artwork in front of a group of my peers. I don't want someone to say, "Oh, I like it," just to be nice, and then move on. I do not want silence. I don't like to hear what I could have done or should have done if it totally changes my piece. I don't want the person critiquing my work to try to change it to look like theirs. I love it when I leave the critique with a burst of energy and ideas. I go straight to the studio and get busy. In another book, Criticizing Photographs, Barrett defines critiquing as informed discourse about art to increase understanding and appreciation of art. He notes that informed is an important qualifier that distinguishes criticism from mere talk and uninformed opinion about art. A way of becoming informed about art is by critically thinking about it. So why does being informed make a difference? Because, as with anything, study and experience make you more equipped to recognize what is successful or not successful. Consider this anecdote by Katy Hoover from the Academy of Art University's School of Photography. Once, a friend asked me to watch her home while she was on vacation, and when she insisted I make myself at home, I did. I knew this meant it was acceptable to drink a bottle of wine or two from the wine rack, but I forgot to ask which ones were designated for me. I knew little about wine, but I was sure good wine didn't come in a Magnum-sized bottle, so that's the one I chose, the only Magnum in the rack. Little did I know that Wine Spectator had just named this particular Magnum Wine of the Year, which meant it was worth at least a day's salary. But the saddest part of the story, since I did replace the bottle, is that I didn't really enjoy the wine for what it was worth. Unfortunately, I didn't know enough about wine to even know what such a good bottle would taste like. Think of Katy and her wine as a critic of photography and an image to be critiqued. Perhaps there's a good photograph in front of her, but without the proper experience, she might not know it's any good. Or perhaps she likes a photograph that might not have professional merit, but simply reminds her of a place she visited last summer, and so it suits her tastes. Does this make the photograph less valuable? No. But if it doesn't have artistic merit, it will have less value out in the world. And ultimately, your education here is intended to help you make images that have merit and value. In order to make such work, you must look to the photographers and critics who have come before you. Questions often arise about the relevance of ratings or critiques. Imagine you are having a glass of wine you really enjoy. You don't have to be a wine connoisseur to know what you like, and so it really doesn't matter how that wine's been rated. But if you are a winemaker seeking to produce a significant and possibly commercially viable wine, you will be paying close attention to the history of wine and how it's harvested, fermented, and bottled, and you'll be tasting the best wine out there. Could you take a blind taste test at a vineyard and pick out the most valuable bottle? If you're not an expert, probably not. You haven't been developing your palate, the ability to detect the myriad tastes, vanilla, oak, cherry, chocolate, or even identify what side of the hill the grapes came from. In reality, true connoisseurs can distinguish up to 200 different flavors in a glass of wine. Some are naturally gifted in this way, but many of the smells and tastes can only be discerned with practice. Like wine connoisseurs, photographers, too, can become discerning critics through dialogue and practice. And in the end, if we're not producing the photographic equivalent of Wine of the Year, that's okay. But if we want to do so, we'll know what it takes. In the end, the best way to be a successful photographer is to look at as much art as possible, thus training the eye and the brain. And in addition to looking, ask questions.
Yes, baby.
I feel a little bit more better.
You feel a
In
little bit
another
more
book,
better?
Criticizing Photographs, Barrett defines critiquing at
Another thing better.
What's that, baby?
I'm feeling better.
Okay. Can I get a hug?
Yeah. I'm just gonna.
Can you really hurt your
It's gonna be hard for me to get right over here. Did you clean your office yet? Did you clean it?
Does it look clean?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit. Cause look at that corner.
Yeah, I still gotta clean that part. Oh, you wanna sit here? Okay, I was just wanting to hug you, but you can come sit.
Can I have this coin?
Yeah.
Hey, thank you. Cause I'm trying to save it for our loud owl.
Oh, well, dolls.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cause I need more. Cause those are loud dolls. Some of them have bodies.
there are
Some
many
of them
ways to
don't.
critique an image.
And
You
the
might
bodies
engage
don't
logic,
match.
emotion, opinion, or experience when evaluating how an image affects you and determining whether or not you find it successful. Let's
Check it out.
first review
But I have
some
to hear my
guidelines.
homework.
Avoid opinions.
What?
Simply
So,
stating whether you like
I'm
or
saying
dislike an
that
image
the
is
loud
not
dolls
helpful.
have all the others.
The explanation of
bodies
why you
don't
like
match
or
and the
dislike an
adults-
image, however, can be helpful,
And the moon
especially
has the
if you
white
can
bodies.
point
That's
to
why I'm saying
specific
that's
elements
for
within
a
the
red
image.
doll and a black
Be specific.
apple.
Look at the image and point out aspects that stand
you
out
smell
to
those
you,
dolls later.
contribute to the meaning of the image, or distract you from the meaning.
Fine, I can hear you.
If you don't get it, ask
I
questions.
love you.
This will give the artist an idea of how successful or unsuccessful they have been at conveying their ideas. Many images are designed to inspire questions rather than provide answers. Be honest. Tell the artist what you see
What?
and what the image makes you think of. It's helpful for artists to be aware of which signs
foot
and
touches stuff
symbols
softly?
viewers
Like what?
recognize. Provide references.
Yeah,
If the
black
images
stuff, though, is
make
the
you
frame.
think of
If you
another
step on it, it'll
artist
break
or
the glass.
photographer, identify
Yeah,
that
so, but
person
you're fine.
in your critique.
What about
Consider
If you already
social
did it, you're fine.
relevance.
Don't worry.
Think
don't
about
keep
whether
doing
or
it, though.
not the image comments on current events or has a historically
We'll move that
relevant
chair
quality.
back into the kitchen.
Minimize suggestions.
All right, I love you.
You may have ideas of how your classmates could improve their images to make more sense to you or become more likable to you. But your goal in critiquing is to help them better articulate their ideas. So be sure your suggestions are in line with their artistic goals, not yours. Before we put our thoughts to action in a constructive critique, Let's take a look at how Terry Barrett categorizes the myriad types of photos that exist. The important thing to note about Barrett's descriptions is that they include all types of photography, from X-rays to illustrations to performance documentation. You won't necessarily be making photographs in all 6 categories. Nonetheless, it's important to understand how context, meaning the who, what, where, when, and why of an image's presentation, can be applied to critiques. In other words, by learning, before anything else, how to categorize an image, you will know how to approach it within its appropriate context. Barrett's 6 categories are descriptive, aesthetically evaluative, theoretical, explanatory, interpretive, and ethically evaluative. After defining these categories, we'll look at the distinctions between them. Often, the most conceptually challenging work exists at the edges, where content both harmonizes with and resists categorization. All photographs have descriptive elements, but some photographs are created purely for the purpose of description. Photos in this category include medical X-rays, portraits for a driver's license, and painting reproductions. Such images are meant to simply record and display visual details. Aesthetically evaluative photographs are those that reside on the formal side of the formal conceptual continuum. They do not have a narrative objective, but instead involve a consideration of form, light, and detail. Edward Weston, Irving Penn, Paul Strand, Paul Caponegro, Harry Callahan, and James Welling typically work in this category. Theoretical photographs are those images that are about photography, photographic criticism, or photographic history. The work of Sherry Levine and Cindy Sherman falls in this category. For example, Untitled, number 205, is part of a body of work in which Sherman references historical masterpieces as a way of critiquing how and why certain artists become historically renowned. This critique becomes more relevant when we realize that most of these artists were men and their subjects were usually women. Explanatory photographs take description a step further by seeking to explain an event or phenomenon. They are often used in science for this reason. Renowned photographs by Harold Edgerton and Edward Muybridge fall in this category. Additionally, explanatory photographs are often created for the news. The image shown here is from Lauren Greenfield's Thin project. Greenfield spent several years documenting patients at the Renfrew Center's Eating Disorder Treatment Program in Florida. Her investigative work spawned a book and a documentary film focusing on the patients there. The designation of explanatory photography tends to be more problematic than that of other categories, due to the varying intentions of the photographers and the contexts in which their pictures are read. Let's take a moment to dissect this issue, which will be enlightening for the development of your own visual literacy. No photograph is ever completely objective. Explanatory photographs are no different, as they involve the photographer's explanation, an intrinsically subjective aspect. Nonetheless, we hold photojournalists to a high standard of objectivity. We expect newsworthy images to maintain a high degree of accuracy, with no manipulation of the subject matter or photograph involved. Consider Lauren Greenfield's Thin Project, which explores the nature of eating disorders, the suffering involved, the possible treatments, and, ideally, the journey from mental illness to mental health. This is a rational, newsworthy inquiry, and a photo essay seems an appropriate method of investigation and reportage. Greenfield's photographic style and vision certainly determine the appearance of the images, but her project is capable of serving as one window into a complicated and prevalent societal issue. While we may appropriately deem these photographs explanatory, it is still important that we recognize the limitations of this category. To take Thin as a completely objective, universal, and definitive study of eating disorders would be to misunderstand the work and its role. Note that the marketing of such work may ask us to do just that. This makes it ever more important to maintain a high level of visual literacy and to always consider how and why a photograph or series of photographs is made. Other bodies of work that Barrett deems explanatory, but whose presence in the explanatory category may be debatable, include Mary Ellen Mark's Falkland Road and Bill Owens's Suburbia. The debate over these bodies of work doesn't concern their authenticity. We believe that Mark and Owens took these photos where they said they did, but rather the degree to which these photographs are explanatory versus interpretive. We'll take a deeper look at the interpretive category next. Photographs that don't seek to explain and are not quantifiable are interpretive. These photographs are taken from an obviously subjective viewpoint, and their composition and meaning tend to be less rational and more abstract, poetic, or poignant. Artists who work in the interpretive category include Duane Michaels, Katie Grannon, Alex Soth, Jerry Ullsman, and Jim Goldberg. These images from Jim Goldberg's series, Rich and Poor, are readily accepted as interpretive. While each of the quotes accompanying the images was uttered by the subject, the selection of phrases comes from longer interviews and was decided on by Goldberg. Notice how the phrase greatly affects the meaning of the image it accompanies. Can you see the similarity to Owens's Suburbia, where a phrase was also selected to accompany the photograph? The issue concerning the work of Owens and Mark, then, is the degree to which it presents an objective or explanatory perspective versus a viewpoint shaped by the vision of the photographer. Most work like this has elements of both, defying precise categorization. Consider Richard Avedon's In the American West. A number of Avedon's subjects and viewers objected to the explanatory nature of the title, and yet he insisted that this body of work did not, in fact, enlighten his audience with anything factual about the American West. Instead, it was an extension of his own experiences and interactions. The last of Barrett's categories is less controversial in definition than it often is in subject matter. It is also subjective in perspective, but involves social and/or political commentary. Lewis Hines' images of child laborers, Robert Adams's landscapes, and most of Martha Rossler's collage work falls in this category. Larry Fink made these two untitled images in his series The Forbidden Pictures in 2001 with a George W. Bush impersonator and several actors. In these photos, Fink created a string of scenes of debauchery and hedonism, suggesting a correlation between the Bush administration and the lavishness of a brothel or a Roman feast. The last of Barrett's categories is less controversial in definition than it often is in subject matter. It is also subjective in perspective, but involves social and/or political commentary. Lewis Hines' images of child laborers, Robert Adams's landscapes, and most of Martha Rossler's collage work falls in this category. Larry Fink made these two untitled images in his series The Forbidden Pictures in 2001 with a George W. Bush impersonator and several actors. In these photos, Fink created a string of scenes of debauchery and hedonism, suggesting a correlation between the Bush administration and the lavishness of a brothel or a Roman feast. What are your artistic goals? You might see your photographs functioning in multiple ways. For example, if you want to practice travel photography, you may like to both publish in magazines and exhibit in galleries. Or you might want to focus on personal projects during the week, but offer your services to cover weddings on the weekends. In any case, Focusing now on the most personal, innovative way to approach assignments means you can step into any industry with the most skill and perspective. For that reason, we'll encourage you to bring the most subjective and interpretive point of view to each and every one of your assignments. During this course, eliminate any sense of a market or client. Focus on your own inspiration, interests, and vision. Later, you can put those to work for others.
Alright, consider. Think about whether or not image comments on current events are historical. Social relevance. Consider. Think about whether. Sure, true. Hinge image would fall into. To explanatory. Maybe interpretive. Let's say interpretive. Eight out of 10. This is explanatory. Okay. This would be ethnically evaluated. Why is it? Alright, whatever, dude. Hey, baby.
Hey, Daddy.
Yeah.
Can I let Quasi out?
No, because he's got to stand there so he doesn't get hurt.
Okay.
I'll take him out to go pee in a little bit, okay?
Okay. But him always wants me to scratch him from inside the.
What's that?
Quasi always wants me to
I know.
scratch him from this
He wants
side.
because he wants to get out, but he's got to have that neck pillow on, and he's got to make sure he's not jumping around and doing anything. And so it's just safer, because he's got surgery where he's got stitches on his balls, and if he tries to get out and he might hurt himself. So you just want him to stay in there until he heals. Okay, I'll take him out in a little bit though. I love you.
What we do?
I gotta go take some photos. Do you want to help me take a photo later?
Yeah.
Okay. asleep. Oh, excuse me.
to make this? Can you help me to make this so I can sink it?
What's that, baby?
Can you help me to make this so I can sink it?
What is it? Did you pour some in there just now?
No, it was
Is this old or is this new?
it was from last time.
Okay, go ahead and dump it. And we'll grab a new pack in it. Give me a minute. Let me finish my homework.
Can I make it 'cause I know how to make it?
If you make it without making a mess, yes.
Do you add water?
Yes, you can add. Well, dump that. Get the powder. Put the new powder in and add water. add a little bit more water to it.
I have to?
Yeah, let's go. Put the water up to here. Look. Put it up to there.
Right up to here?
Yeah, just halfway up. Alright, that part is done. Excuse. So now I have to.
Daddy,
Yes, baby.
this high?
No, not too much. Because you're gonna spill it. I mean, that's good if you sit down and not spill it, okay? Sit down and drink it. You have a sip now so you don't spill it. Good? Okay. So it's all stirred. Slowly walk and don't trip and spill. Watch where you're going. Watch your feet. Don't spill your cup. Yep. Alright, so now all I have left to do is principle of design, gallery essay. I take photos, but for this time I visit a gallery or museum that features photography and find anything. Yeah, I put it on this. I would have done this sooner. Okay, if I can do it online. Can you not bring it here? Stop bringing it here, baby. I said you were fine. Sit on the counter before you spill it all over the carpet and you can't get it out, okay? You don't have to bring it back here anymore. Just stop filling it up and just drink your drink, okay? Alright. 65. she missing a limb? Yeah. She's missing an arm. And a leg. I'd still hit it. Be nice. Oh, these ones appear to be. I have a few fears from this one.